My name is Karla Alcala. I am from Mexico City and currently I am living in the States. Learning about leadership has been fascinating, and I really think that great company success has everything to do with their leaders. As a woman, one of the things that I want to understand is the gender gap in top positions. My presentation's main goal is to study the gender gap and its positive relationship with the authentic leadership approach. Let's start by defining what do we mean by the gender gap. Although we have come a long way addressing inequality between women and men, it still persists today. The gender gap shows us how unequal access to opportunity maintain inequality between the sexes. There are a number of different ways we can think about the gender gap. For example, pay gap, education, political power, and participation of women in the global economy. We can see that we have done a lot of progress addressing inequality. And to understand the gender gap, we want to talk a little bit about how have women's rights advanced throughout history, because it will help us to understand why things are the way they are right now, and how we can improve the future. In other words, it will give us perspective to see and evaluate new alternatives to close the gender gap. Between 1918 and 2018, we can perceive some of the major progress done about women's rights. For example, they can apply for a credit card or loan in their own name, they can work in the legal profession in civil service, they can inherit and reclaim property on the same term as men, they can claim equal pay for doing the same work as men, they can prosecute a spouse for rape. Women's rights to vote were certainly a huge step forward to move us further down the road towards equal access to education, which is very often the determinant of a life path. Undeniably, women today have access to far greater employment opportunities than ever before in history. However, there is still a lot of work to be done. The Global Gender Gap Report is a tool for tracking gender equality over time. According to the World Bank, the Global Gender Gap Index measures equality between women and men. This index evaluates 4 different categories: health, which means sex-gender ratio at birth and life expectancy; education, in other words, literacy gaps in primary, secondary, and tertiary enrollment; economy participation, which means how many women are making it into the labor force; and political empowerment, in other words, gender gap in parliament, amongst ministers, and the executive role. In 2015, 450 countries were measured, and none of a single one of them have closed the gender gap. Countries such as Iceland, Norway, Finland, and Sweden have managed to close about 80% of the gender disparity. However, there is still a lot of work to be done. For example, the United States occupied the 28th place and the United Kingdom occupied the 18th position. Let's talk about some of the areas where we still have some work to do in addressing this inequality. When we think about the gender gap, one of the things that probably immediately comes to mind is the pay gap, which refers to the difference in wages and salaries between men and women. On average, women make about 80% of what men do. There are also racial disparities. White women and Asian American women, on average, make more than Hispanic, African American, or Native. It's not just pay that it's unequal though. It's also the type of jobs that women do. One bit of good news is in education. In the past, women were much less likely to obtain higher education than men. But recently, that has been changing. We now see women surpassing men in terms of educational attainment. In fact, about 57% of college students are now women. But this picture is a little bit more complicated. On average, boys still score higher in math than girls do on standardized tests. What about women in top leadership positions? If we focus on history, we can clearly see how much women have achieved in terms of success. However, there is still a lot of work to do when it comes to women's participation in top positions in any profession. Women are not making it to the top. They remain in positions of intermediate controls. In other words, women are not achieving top leadership jobs such as directions, board seats, or high positions of power in politics. According to Northhouse, women represent only 4% of Fortune 500 CEOs, and hold only 16.9% of the Fortune 500 board seats. and mere 14.6 of the Fortune 500 executive officer positions. On the political front, women currently occupy 100 of the 535 seats in the U.S. Congress. The world average of women's representation in national legislatures or parliaments is 29.9%. Women represent just 6.9% of military officers at the level of brigadier, general, and rear admiral or higher. But why closing the gender gap is important? According to the World Economic Forum, there is a strong correlation between a country's progress in closing the gender gap and its economic competitiveness. A recent study done by the Credit Suisse Research Institute of 3,000 companies in diverse sectors and countries yielded to the conclusion that women occupy only about 13% of top management positions, like CEOs and people who report directly to them. The gender gap does not hurt only women, it hurts everyone. Healthy, educated women are more likely to have healthier and more educated children, creating a virtuous cycle of development. Companies with more women in top management and board positions better reflect the profiles of their customers and employees, benefit from more diverse views when solving problems, rank higher on indicators of organizational cooperation and health, and report higher profitability and returns on equity. In terms of leadership, we can clearly see that women are not having the same representation as men in top managerial positions. It is a fact that when women occupy influential positions, they struggle to inspire respect and admiration from their followers. Women are capable and resourceful, but a lot of them are leading in the middle management. And the question is, what has to happen to take all these women mired in the middle to the top? We believe that the core of gender gap is women's lack of confidence to pursue those top positions. For example, according to Sandberg, the COO of Facebook, women do not negotiate for themselves. They do not negotiate their salary. In addition, men attribute their success to themselves, and women attribute it to other external factors. The most important goal of our study was to understand why women are not well represented in top positions of leadership within the corporate environment, such as directions or positions of powers in politics, and how authentic leadership can possibly affect these figures. Because our hypothesis is that women are not making it to the top because they decide not to pursue it. Trying to explain the gender gap between women and men, we explore the labyrinth metaphor, which encompasses 3 dimensions: human capital differences, prejudice, and gender differences. Talking about human capital differences, we can clearly see that some authors try to explain the gender gap, suggesting that women have less education, training, and work experience than men. However, data shows that the number of women obtaining doctoral and MBA degrees is not different than men. But women do have less work experience than men. Many authors agree that this gap of experience can be related to domestic and childcare duties. As a consequence of their domestic responsibilities, women tend to have more career interruptions than men. It leads to prejudice against female leaders and fewer opportunities. Other approaches suggest that women have different capabilities and leadership effectiveness than men. However, much academic research agrees that gender has no relationship to leadership style and efficiency. Women and men are equally capable, motivated, and committed. However, women are less likely to self-promote and negotiate for themselves. Let's talk about prejudice. According to Cundiff and Decio, stereotypes can be a viable explanation for why women are underrepresented, and men are overrepresented in senior leadership positions. Stereotypes are embedded ideas that influence the way people think about others. Those ideas lead to biased judgment affecting women's opportunities to succeed. There are a number of different explanations for the persistence of the gender gap. It is clear that in this epoch, most women of the world have basic human rights, and that they enjoy more career choices. However, we still have a problem, and the problem is that women are not making it to the top of any professions anywhere in the world. For example, in the corporate sector, the percentage of women in positions such as CEOs or CFOs is just about 15%. But why is this happening? Our hypothesis is that women face harder choices between professional success and personal fulfillment. For example, according to a recent study made in the US by Sheryl Sandberg, the chief operating officer of Facebook and founder of LinkedIn.org, show that of married senior managers, 2/3 of the married men had children, and only 1/3 of the married women had children. Women decide not to pursue top managerial positions. Keeping women in the workforce is the answer to close the gender gap, because women do have less work experience than men. We already stated that women tend to drop out of work more than men, which is highly related with family and career choices. If we think about it, nowadays women have many career opportunities and they have more chances to succeed. Women are stuck in middle management, and we believe that empowering the principles of the authentic leadership approach could help women to move up in organizations, because authentic leaders are those who have a clear view of who they are, what they want to accomplish, and they trust themselves and their teams. This approach can inspire women to pursue top positions because it makes leadership affordable for anyone who genuinely cares about the team and the organizations. The idea is to encourage women to believe that they do not have to change themselves to achieve positions of power. They can be authentic, and that they can rely on their followers to keep a successful balance between personal life and professional success. Reinforcing authentic leadership can change these figures because authentic leaders trust their team members to help them to get their work done. Women face harder choices between family and work success, and women face harder prejudice than men. If we think about it, women leaders have to show twice as much commitment and capabilities than men. When women want to achieve positions of power, they have to be seen as superior and rigorous, because we have this idea that leaders are not cheerful and enthusiastic. They have to adapt their personalities, and they have to decide between professional and personal success. However, the authentic leadership approach changes this perspective and makes leadership affordable for anybody. Organizations want leaders to have a clear vision of who they are and which are their capabilities. To move up, we have to be known for our leadership skills. It means that we have to be recognized for using our talents and abilities to inspire others to achieve and sustain positive outcomes. Organizations want leaders that help them to accomplish their strategic financial goals and who can do that by working effectively with others. This perspective makes leadership affordable for anyone who pursues it. In other words, anyone can be a good leader if he or she leads with passion, vision, and has a service attitude. Let's talk a little bit about authentic leadership. As North has pointed out, the authentic leadership theory is still in its development stage. Therefore, assumptions about it may change over time. However, this theory is practical because all of us have had the opportunity to experience different leadership styles. And the ones who stand out are those who have a unique way to connect with people. In other words, we can trust them. Authentic is just another word to describe something genuine. If we take the follower's perspective, we could say that it's natural to engage with someone who genuinely cares about the team and who have a clear vision. They will trust that the leader will always know what to do under any circumstances. It is all about empathy and communication. If we train, support, and prepare the right people, they will sum up to our goals. Authentic leaders have clear targets, and they encourage people to change the outcomes. This approach entirely differs from the image of authorities issuing orders, and people standing around waiting for instructions. Authentic leaders develop teams with individuals who have a unique set of skills, talent, and who are aligned with the mission. Authentic leaders seek to show a fundamental commitment and real concern about people and goals. Confidence, hope, optimism, and resilience are some of the essential traits of authentic leaders. This approach implies taking responsibility, building community capacity, and involving group members in shaping discussions and meeting agendas. Authentic leaders seek to grow through involving others, allowing others to improve, trusting in the wisdom of others, having courage, conveying safety, being comfortable with ambiguity, and healing moments.